They laughed at her helmet, mocked her clothes, and called her weak. But when one biker laid hands on her, he didn't know she'd trained for moments like this. What happened next? Even his crew backed away in fear. Subscribe to Simply Stories. For more powerful tales like this, it was supposed to be just another delivery, just like all the others, the kind that barely earned her a nod, let alone respect. But this one felt different. As she rolled her scratched-up scooter to a stop, near the curb, her senses sharpened. The late afternoon sun bounced off chrome exhaust pipes, and the air smelled like gasoline, sweat, and arrogance. The roar of motorcycles filled the street outside the cafe, big machines handled by even bigger egos. At a cluster of leather-jacketed bikers stood in a semicircle, each one louder and cockier than the next, their booming laughs shaking the pavement. She parked quietly, adjusted the straps of her faded food bag, and took off her helmet. Her thick curls sprang free, catching the sunlight. That's when it started, the snickering, the exaggerated whistles, the low, sarcastic applause. One of them mimicked her walk with a limp and a sway, sending the others into fits of laughter. Another pointed at her bag and cracked. She must have taken a wrong turn into a man's job. Hope she didn't burn the fries with all that multitasking. Their voices rose above the engines, slicing through the air like taunts hurled from behind a safe wall of ignorance. She didn't respond. Not with her mouth, at least. Her face was calm, unreadable. She'd heard worse. She'd lived through worse. They were just noise. She walked toward the cafe entrance, eyes scanning the order number on her phone, willing her heart to stay steady. Just another delivery. Just another chance to keep her head down and survive the moment. But the biggest one in the group had other plans. He stepped forward, blocking the door, his massive frame planted like a wall. Tattoos crawled up his neck. His helmet dangled from one hand like a warning. His boots scraped the pavement as he leaned forward, puffing his chest like a rooster. In a fight he already thought he'd won. "Where's your manager?" he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "They're just letting anyone ride now, huh?" "What's next? Kids with tricycles delivering steaks?" His crew erupted again. One clutched his stomach from laughing. Another slapped the seat of his own bike, as if it were the punchline. She remained silent, her expression unreadable. No flinch, no anger, just a slow inhale. She stepped to the side, attempting to move past him, holding up the printed receipt. With the customer's name and order, no words exchanged. Just the quiet dignity of someone who had decided not to play their game, but he wasn't done. With one quick swipe, he smacked the receipt from her hand. The paper fluttered like a feather in the wind before landing near his boot. He smirked as if he'd done something clever, as if he'd just proven a point. And that was the moment the air shifted. The laughter around him was slower this time. Uneasy. One or two of the bikers glanced at each other. They hadn't expected that, not in public, not with people watching from the cafe window. But it was too late now. The damage had been done. He turned to walk away, confident that he'd put her in her place. But her stance changed. She bent down, not to pick up the receipt, but to retrieve her helmet quietly, deliberately. Then she stood tall, helmet under one arm, her eyes fixed not on him, but on the bike behind him. Lips didn't move, but something about the way she held herself made it clear. She was done being quiet, and still no one knew. No one suspected. They saw a black woman in a delivery uniform, a girl with a scratched-up scooter and a bent helmet. They didn't see the midnight training sessions, the bruised knuckles, the silent hours spent in gyms no one ever noticed. They didn't see the hours of discipline, the sweat, the power stored in a body built for more than just survival. She looked down once more at the receipt on the ground, then at the man who slapped it away like her presence didn't matter. Her chest rose and fell in a slow breath. She didn't speak. She didn't need to, because silence, when it comes from someone who knows exactly what they're capable of, can be more deafening than a scream. The man turned, finally noticing she hadn't walked away. For a second he hesitated. Her eyes were calm to calm. Something about that stillness unnerved him, but pride kept him standing tall. He tilted his head, cracking his knuckles. "You gonna cry now? You want me to call someone for you?" She stared at him, no fear, no weakness, just measured calculation. And the smallest biker, standing at the edge of the group, muttered under his breath, "Yo, y'all feel that?" They didn't yet, but they would. Because what none of them realized, what even the cafe manager who peeked through the blinds failed to grasp, was that the real delivery wasn't the food in her bag. It was the lesson that was about to land in full force, and none of them were ready to receive it. He got closer. That same smug grin curling at the corners of his mouth, as if he'd just scored a victory that no one could take from him. This was dominance, control, another moment to bask in attention. His heavy boots scraped the pavement, slow and deliberate, and he tilted his head like a predator sizing up easy prey. But in that moment, it wasn't intimidation, it was ignorance. The space between them shrank, and with it, the last thread of patience she held. Then, without warning, his arm came up. His hand struck the side of her helmet, sending it flying from her head. The loud crack of plastic on pavement echoed across the cafe's front lot. Time froze. The casual hum of conversation vanished. Even the clinking of silverware inside stopped. People looked up. Some stood. A woman at a nearby table covered her mouth. No one spoke. Even the other bikers fell silent. Not one of them expected it to go that far. They had joked, teased, mocked, but this was something else. This crossed a line they didn't know existed until he shattered it. But she didn't react the way they thought she would. She didn't stumble back. She didn't cry. She didn't raise her voice or call for help. She simply turned her head slowly, mechanically, as if giving her body a moment to catch up with the insult. Her curls, now free from the helmet, framed her face, hiding just enough of her expression to make it unreadable. And then her eyes locked on his. No blink, no tremble, just fire. Controlled, quiet fire. He smirked again, still not understanding. He took a step forward, towering over her. But before his boot even hit the ground, she moved. There was no hesitation. A quick pivot of her hips. Her hand snapped forward, catching his wrist. In one smooth motion, she twisted his arm behind his back and drove his balance downward. His knees buckled. A grunt burst from his mouth as his face dropped inches from the pavement. He tried to push against her grip, but it was already too late. The weight of his body bent beneath the force of hers. But not from strength, from skill. From absolute control. The crowd gasped. The biker's crew jolted forward, unsure whether to intervene or run. One reached for his belt chain but froze when she shot him a look. Sharp, focused, and terrifyingly calm. No words. Threats. Just that stare. She shifted her foot slightly, keeping her balance perfect. Her grip never wavered. The biker beneath her wriggled like a trapped animal, cursing under his breath, sweat beading across his forehead. He wasn't used to being touched like this, subdued. Not by rage, but by precision. This wasn't street brawling, this was art. Inside the cafe, chairs scraped as people stood. Phones were already raised, recording. A waiter leaned on the window, mouth slightly open. Some of the customers looked between their screens and reality, hardly believing both matched. One older man murmured, "I've seen her before. That's her. From the amateur circuit. She fought twice her weight and still won." Another whispered, "Isn't she the one who went viral last year? The fighter who knocked that coach cold?" Here, she wasn't a fighter. Not in gloves. Not in a ring. She was a woman in a delivery vest, bringing food. And defending something that didn't come in paper bags. Her worth. She shifted her weight. Again, and let go. The biker stumbled backward, catching himself on one hand. His breathing was ragged. His face, once smug and superior, was now pale and shaken. He glared at her as if still trying to make sense of what had just happened. She didn't taunt. She didn't gloat. Just stepped back and picked up her helmet from where it had landed. Dusting off the edge with her fingers, that silence returned. Even the engines idled quietly, like they were watching too. But humiliation is a fuel for fools. and he was full of it. Face flushed with rage, his pride now publicly shredded, he staggered to his feet and stormed toward his bike. Gravel crunched beneath his boots as he kicked the stand up and swung one leg over. His fingers gripped the throttle, and the engine roared back to life like a caged beast unleashed. That was mistake number 2. The back wheel spun with anger, sending dust in every direction. The bike lunged forward, and he aimed it straight at Hernot at high speed, but fast. Enough to scare. He thought she'd flinch, thought she'd run, that she'd finally lose her composure and stumble like he had. But she didn't. She stepped to the side just enough, hand reaching forward again with precision. In one motion, she grabbed the handlebar, turned it sharply, and used the bike's own momentum to throw it off balance. The machine twisted beneath him like a wild animal betrayed. He panicked, trying to control it, but gravity didn't wait for apologies. The entire bike tipped sideways. Metal groaned as it slammed into the pavement, dragging him with it. His body twisted beneath the frame. A loud thud followed, screamed not from pain but from panic. One leg pinned, his elbow scraped. Oil began to leak onto the concrete. The crowd gasped again, louder this time. Some laughed. Others cheered. No one moved to help. The bikers stepped back. One of them whispered, "I ain't touching her." Another muttered, "She just folded him like paper." She didn't gloat. She didn't even look at him. Instead, she calmly placed her helmet back on her head and strapped it under her chin. Then she turned slightly, gaze sweeping across the silent crowd. It was no longer a scene of mockery. It was a lesson, not in violence, but in power, control, in dignity, and as the biker groaned under the weight of the very machine he'd hoped would give him dominance. She took one step forward, not to hurt him, but to make it clear. She didn't start this, but she was going to finish it. The engine roared like a beast unleashed, gravel spitting under the back tire as the biker lunged forward. His jaw was clenched, his hands trembling on the throttle. He didn't think he reacted, not to defend himself, but to regain control over something he never truly had. He aimed the front wheel toward her, not at full speed, but fast enough to send a message, a warning, scare tactic meant to remind her of her place. But that was the thing, he never knew where she truly stood to begin with. She didn't move. Not a step. Her body stayed calm, centered, unreadable. And then, just before the metal beast could reach her, she moved not frantically, but with precision, one sidestep. One motion of her hand grabbing the handlebar with the grace of someone who had done this 1,000 times in her head. She twisted it, using his own speed against him. The bike tilted sharply, its balance slipped instantly. The front wheel jerking sideways, and for a split second, he looked like a child who had lost control of a toy too big for him. Then everything collapsed. The bike flipped. The rider tangled in its fall. The heavy frame slammed onto him with a crash that echoed through the street. Metal screamed against pavement. His sunglasses shattered beneath the impact, shards scattering like the last bits of pride he held. The engine sputtered, coughed, then died under the weight of its rider. And he lay there pinned beneath the machine that was supposed to make him invincible. He groaned. Breath caught in his throat, limbs twitching beneath the crushed chrome. There was no grace left in his movements. Just panic, humiliation, helplessness. His crew stood stunned. No one moved, not even the loudest of them. The laughter had stopped long ago, replaced now with disbelief and a creeping fear of what else she might be capable of. Then she stepped forward, not with aggression, but calm control. She reached down, picked up her helmet, and finally after, all the silence spoke. "You ride for attention," she said, her voice steady, low, and sharp enough to cut through the air. "I ride to survive." The words didn't echo. They didn't need to.
Ollie.
They landed with weight, not volume. Like truth wrapped in steel. One of the bikers muttered something about calling the cops. But the panic in his voice betrayed his bravado. He was looking for a way out, not justice. She tapped the small camera embedded in her delivery vest. The blinking red light, now very visible in the sunlight. Already recording, she said without emotion. Whole thing's uploaded. Ripple went through the group. Phones slid back into pockets. Words caught in throats. They were no longer the ones controlling the narrative. The power they held by standing in a circle, by mocking, by filming others, they had just handed it all over, unknowingly to her. With that one tap, inside the cafe, the tension spilled through the doors. The manager finally came rushing out, not to check on the biker, but to glance nervously between customers and cameras, calculating the cost of viral attention. His shirt stuck to his back from sweat. He offered shallow concern, the kind laced with legal fear, not compassion. It's everything. Okay here? He asked, eyes darting between faces. He was trying to read the scene like a confused witness stepping in too late. But he wasn't needed because moments later, the sound of sirens cut through the air. Two cruisers pulled up, tires crunching on gravel. Doors opening in sync. Officers stepped out, hands ready but not aggressive. They had already been briefed. Someone had shared the clip. What? Several someones, in fact. Before they'd even left the precinct, the footage had already been reshared, retweeted, downloaded, and clipped. It was everywhere. Local channels. National. Feeds. The internet didn't wait for reports, it made its own. The officers approached slowly. One knelt beside the biker, who still groaned, face red, voice bitter with embarrassment. He tried to explain, to twist the story. But no one was buying it. Not today. They turned to her next. Ma'am, the older officer said, polite and cautious. We've seen the footage. You okay? She nodded once, still calm, still composed. She didn't offer more than necessary. Didn't need to. Charges, the officer added, turning toward the crowd. Nothing to dispute here. The manager let out a sigh of relief. The bikers quietly stepped back. Some peeled away toward their bikes. One whispered something about deleting videos. Another just shook his head, muttering, man, we messed with the wrong one. But the damage had already been done, and not to her. By the time the officers left, the story had exploded. Hundreds of thousands of views. Headlines forming in real time. Delivery woman flips biker who harassed her caught on camera. Biker slapped her helmet off. She gave him a lesson he'll never forget. Comment sections lit up. Thousands of people watching, applauding, defending, sharing. She moved like a pro. This is what calm power looks like, he brought. The bike, she brought the balance. Respect isn't given. She took it. Her phone buzzed once, and again. Notifications stacked like bricks. People tagging her. People finding old fight footage. People remembering. She wasn't just a delivery worker anymore. She was her again, the fighter, the silent one. The one who never needed to raise her voice, to make noise. She walked back to her scooter slowly, adjusting the strap on her vest, helmet under her arm. She paused once, looking over her shoulder, not with vengeance, not with pity, just a quiet nod to the street that tried to break her, and failed. The biker was still sitting beside his fallen machine, head down, no longer raging, just small. The noise was gone. And she didn't need to stay. She started the engine of her scratched-up scooter, the motor humming like a heartbeat, steady and reliable. And then she rode off, not fast, not slow, just forward. Because she wasn't here to win a fight. She was here to deliver. The biker sat on the curb for a long time after she left, cradling his bruised ego more than any actual injury. The weight of the motorcycle was nothing compared to the weight of the silence around him. No one laughed. No one clapped him on the back. His crew shifted awkwardly, some avoiding eye contact, others already scrolling through their phones, seeing the damage unfold in real time. Comments flooded in by the minute. The video edited and raw was now on every major social platform. There was no spinning it. No clever caption could undo what the world had seen with their own eyes. He tried. Of course, that night, he posted a shaky statement claiming it was all a misunderstanding, that the situation had been exaggerated, that he never meant harm. He tried to make himself the victim of an overreaction, blaming cancel culture, editing, even the glare of the sun for how it all looked. But the internet wasn't interested in apologies wrapped in excuses. They didn't need opinions when the footage spoke louder than any carefully crafted tweet. The backlash came fast. First, his sponsors, small brands that once paid for stickers, on his bike now posted quiet statements, distancing themselves. One by one, his name disappeared from flyers for upcoming amateur races. No official ban, just silence. Event organizers stopped responding to his messages. A few bold headlines followed. Amateur biker faces fallout after assaulting delivery worker. His crew stopped tagging him. Few blocked him altogether. He was becoming a cautionary tale, not a champion. And meanwhile, she kept delivering. Not. Much changed for her on the outside. Same scooter, same vest. Same route. But everywhere she went now, there were faces she didn't expect. People smiled when she arrived. Some gave her extra tips without saying a word. Others asked for selfies, awkwardly excited like she was someone famous. Children waved at her from car windows. For the first time, she didn't feel invisible. In her uniform, she felt seen. One gym offered her a job, just like that. The owner had watched the full video and recognized the precision in her movements, kind that came from real training, not instinct alone. "You shouldn't be fighting for free," he said. "Come teach here." But she politely declined. Not out of pride, but clarity. She didn't want revenge. She wasn't looking to build a brand, become a name, or live off the moment. She didn't step into that fight for followers. She stepped into it because she had to. All she ever wanted was respect, and now people gave it freely. Not out of pity, but because they had watched her hold her ground not through anger or cruelty, but with control, dignity, power without spectacle. Even days later, the story still circulated. A podcast featured a segment on it. Talk shows dissected it. Commentators praised her calm under pressure, her refusal to escalate, her brilliance in using her opponent's own aggression against him. Women reposted it with the caption, "This is what strength looks like." Some men reposted it with a very different tone: regret, apology, or quiet reflection. It reached corners of the world she'd never seen, but she stayed focused, grounded. She rode her scooter like she always had, through heat, through traffic, past honking horns and long red lights, but something in her had shifted. Not her ego, her sense of place. She no longer shrank when people stared. She no longer brushed off the unease that came with entering loud spaces. That day outside the cafe hadn't just revealed what she could do. It reminded her of what she had always known but tried to silence. She was more than her job, her jacket, her size, her skin. Weeks passed. Summer stretched on. And one afternoon, she happened to ride past the same cafe again. It looked different. Now, calmer. The usual crowd had shifted. No leather jackets. No group of bikers revving their engines like kings of the sidewalk. Just quiet customers sipping iced drinks, scrolling through their phones. She didn't stop. She had no reason to. But then she noticed something at the edge of the parking lot. Another scooter parked, engine off. A rider leaned against it, dressed simply, no colors, no patches. It's just another delivery worker. But as she slowed to a stop at the light, he looked. Up, their eyes met. He didn't speak, didn't make a scene. Just lifted a closed fist and held it out gently in her direction. She looked at it for a moment, then gave a quiet nod and bumped it back. Nothing more was said. No applause, no cameras. Because in that small gesture, she saw what mattered. Not victory, not fame, just acknowledgement. Quiet, genuine acknowledgement from someone who understood. She rode off again, her engine humming softly beneath her. And as she merged into traffic, weaving past cars and buses, she felt something most. People chase their whole lives. Peace. Not because the world had suddenly changed, because she had walked through the fire and never let it define her. The day at the cafe was never about a fight. It was about a line crossed and a truth revealed. She hadn't lashed out. She had. Stood tall. She had used her silence, her skill, and her strength not to destroy, but to defend. And the world had seen it. not through her words, but through her actions. And now, even as the noise faded, the memory remained etched, not just in views or shares or comment sections, but in every nod, every smile, every quiet show of respect she received from strangers who now knew her worth, because what she proved that day was something no engine could ever drown out. Dignity, strength, and silence, when owned fully can roar louder than any machine.